can't really generalize Southeast Asian markets as one, because they're very different in terms of their readiness for adoption, in terms of their advancement of adoption. So, for example, Singapore is probably ahead of all other markets, but it's also a very unique country and with very unique conditions. On the other hand, other markets such as Thailand, they are approaching this question from completely different angle. So they're trying to push manufacturing ahead of adoption. So they're trying to build up manufacturing capacities. They're trying to actually bring manufacturers to start building electric cars, and then they will figure out how to sell it to the customers. So this this question would need definitely to and any researcher to actually look at every country case by case. Every country has EVs in focus to a certain extent because it's the global trend and it cannot be ignored. It's the trend that is disrupting automotive industry right now. So every country has to look into it, but they all have different focus. So Thailand, for example, focusing on manufacturing and providing incentives for the manufacturers only. They are targeting, for example, to switch all the manufacturing to electric vehicles by 50% by 2030. So by 2030, every second car has to be electric car that is produced in Thailand. But for example, there's no incentives for the customers to buy electric cars, and there's barely any infrastructure. So that's a conundrum here. But other countries like Malaysia, they're focusing on both sides. They are providing incentive for manufacturers and for customers, but it's still not enough. So in general, Southeast Asian markets are it's different numbers by different experts, between like 5 and 10 years behind Europe and North America, but Europe is also not very homogeneous in this matter. So some countries are way ahead, like Sweden, with half of the fleet is being already electric. So there's no similar cases. Every country has different regulations. Every country has different priorities. In Singapore as well, it's private companies trying to start this business, kickstart this business. The problem is always a chicken and egg problem. If you want to build charging infrastructure and you want to build a profitable business, it's really difficult to do this without any like solid business plan. If you don't know how many customers are going to be using your charging points, you don't know if there's going to be any further incentives. So for example, in Singapore, in particular case, cars are still beyond affordability point. So it's not a mean of transport for most of the people. It's still a luxury item. So a lot of customers, they want to switch to these cars, electric cars, without the charging infrastructure, and other way around, charging infrastructure is not going to expand unless there's enough customers to be using the services. So yeah, this is the situation that has to be supported by the government as well. And that's why charging point operators, the private companies, they definitely need the support from the regulatory side. BMW and Mercedes with Audi and Volkswagen, pretty much the like big German manufacturers, they built the entire chain of superchargers that would cover the whole Europe, and they're investing on their own. So they created a joint venture called Digital Solutions. So yeah, this is this whole joint venture is driven by manufacturers together. So they're covering Europe. Here in Thailand, for example, we, BMW Thailand, supported by the headquarters, we are building our charging infrastructure as well. We have more than 100 charging points already, and they're completely subsidized by our BMW business. So yeah, this is pretty ubiquitous. Most of the manufacturers trying to support sales of vehicles by providing the infrastructure as well. Definitely, the intention is to comply with the market standard. So definitely we all have to have the compatible charging solution. This is a dead end if everybody will continue building different charging points. It has already been a big issue having different charging standard in the US, in Europe, and in China. It's been creating a lot of troubles for adoption of the EVs. So yes, definitely when, for example, manufacturers are building chargers in Europe, then it's the European standard CCS2. If it's in Thailand, it's also CCS2. In the States, it's still Type 1. So yeah, it definitely harmonization of the standards is definitely one of the crucial questions for the worldwide adoption of the electric vehicles, not only for the Southeast Asia.